Hey friends, I'm here with expert luthier Marshall Brune, and today we're covering the 5 things you need to know before you buy a classical guitar. This video is going to be for those who don't know a lot about classical guitars, but are looking to buy one and are maybe a bit worried about doing the wrong thing. So we're aiming this video at beginners who are looking to upgrade to something they're going to be really happy with. So don't worry, we're not going to be talking about guitars worth $200,000 in this video. This is aimed for the average person who's looking to buy an instrument they're going to be happy with.
As a luthier, I get the honor of helping people with their first guitar purchase. And the first thing that I always see is, how much do you want to spend?
Exactly. Before you go to a shop, what's your budget? Because that's going to determine all of the following questions. How much are you willing to spend? When it comes to price point, Marshall, someone buying their first guitar, I think the fear is often they really don't want to spend a lot, but at the same time, they're worried that if they don't spend enough, they're going to be stuck with something that's basically going to hinder their learning process. What's a good amount to spend on your first classical guitar that's really reasonable for our average viewer?
For our average viewer, I would say probably I would never want to spend less than $300.
Okay.
And I wouldn't want to spend more than $1,500 at the top edge, but I think that $1,000 is really an okay point.
Okay. Having heard from some of you in the comments, I think it's clear that most of you are not ready to spend $1,000 on a guitar. So I noticed, let's start with the bottom. I noticed that you said the bottom is $300. I see a lot of people out there buying guitars for $200, for example. Why did you start at $300? What should they know about that?
Well, if you ever get a crack on your guitar, you don't want it to be totaled because of that. If you need a new set of machines, you don't want it to be totaled because the machines will be more expensive than your guitar.
Oh, I see. It's just a question of if something goes wrong,
yeah,
the replacement parts will cost more than the instrument itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
At $300, you don't get a GSO, which is a guitar-shaped object. You get an instrument.
So I agree with Marshall. Spend at least $300. There's so many guitars on the market for that price point. If you are a true beginner and you're just playing for fun, don't worry, this is going to be good enough to play. You'll be happy with it. But if you're getting super into guitar, you might have to upgrade at some point.
Yeah.
So for those looking to upgrade, or maybe they can spend a bit more, what do you get around $1,000?
You get something that actually you could use in a concert setting. You get a good sound, cohesive package, sustain, resonance, all the buzzwords.
Cool. Let's move on to the second most important thing you have to know before buying a guitar, and that is playability. If you've seen any of Marshall and my videos in the past where we compare $200,000, $2,000, $200,000 guitars, we do blindfold tests. By the way, check all those videos out if you haven't already. But from those videos, the clear consensus, the clear realization that we both had is playability is king. If the instrument is not easy to play, if it's too difficult, it doesn't matter how much it costs, doesn't matter how fancy the woods are, how pretty it is, you're not going to want to play it, and your music will suffer.
Yeah, music is hard. You don't have to fight the guitar.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't matter how expensive it is. Cheap guitars can play easy, expensive guitars can play hard.
Yes.
And that's a you thing, and a me thing, and a you thing. So
Right.
you got to fit it to your hands.
Fit it to your hands, and also know that some things in terms of playability are changeable. It's true that you can have an adjustment done to make the instrument easier to play, but in my experience, when I'm buying something, I want it to be amazing right then. I want it to feel good at the moment. Could it still be improved a little bit? Yes. Could something that's really hard to play be slightly better? Yes. But when I have something in my hands and it feels great, generally, I recommend going in that direction. You don't want to guess about whether it's going to feel good later. It should feel good right then if you're going to buy it.
I see this a lot, where somebody brings me in a guitar that they bought off of the internet. Hi. And they've never touched it, and they go, this guitar is really hard. It's like, well, why'd you buy it then? Well, I never saw it. So you may get a good deal on the front end, but you may end up spending a ton with a luthier to get it playable. So, you don't want to spend too much on a guitar that you haven't seen, that the person isn't willing to take it back.
We live in the age of the internet. We live in the age of, I see this person play this guitar and we can just buy it in 10 seconds online. I know it's very tempting. My advice would be, since we're talking in this video about budget beginner guitars, that price point of $300 to $1,000, something around there, there's so many brands that offer classical guitars in that price range, and it can be overwhelming to make a decision. My advice is look up reviews from other people to see what they're really happy with, and then go to a guitar shop, go to your local guitar shop and try out these instruments in person. You have to get your hands on them, and even if you can literally only play open strings, or maybe just like the very first few notes of Romanza or something, you don't have to be a master guitar player. Just pick the guitars up and try each one. You will hear a difference.
You will.
You will feel a difference. Something will be easier, something will be harder, one thing will be more resonance, and something will speak to you. That is more important than anything someone could tell you.
Yeah. Take a friend. And really, I like to use the squeeze test. If you don't know, it's where you take the guitar in your hands and you take your first finger and maybe bar the first or second fret, because that'll tell you how easy it's going to be in the first position, which is very easy. And then also come up here to the 12th fret and do the same thing. And if you can feel that this is really difficult here, but really easy here, that's going to be a very long-term difficult guitar. If it's difficult here and difficult here, that's something that can be fixed.
And by the way, you can measure these things, but I think really you'll feel the difference. Grab the two guitars, and especially for me at least, squeeze at the 12th fret is kind of usually the part where it's the highest. And squeeze up here, and if one feels easier, go with the easier one.
Yep.
Because again, playability is king. If there's too much height between the string and the frets, we call that the action, every single note you play, and you'll play thousands per piece, depending on the piece, you're going to be exerting more effort, wasting energy, and your music will suffer, your body will suffer. The action should be low, and just feel which guitar does that for you.
The third thing that you should be looking for is something that I am very familiar with, which is the sound of the guitar. And this is something where, under $1,000, you can still find great gems. I've got some really cheap guitars at my house that I use, and they were maybe $300, $400, so I'm not just playing on expensive stuff. The sound is something that it will speak to you. You'll feel it in your heart when it's the right guitar, and it doesn't matter how expensive it is. I like cheap guitars. I like expensive guitars. I'd rather have a $300 guitar that I play than a $300,000 one that I don't play.
I couldn't agree more. In the end, it's music, and we have to like the sound. Even if you don't have a trained ear, even if you haven't played hundreds of guitars, you have ears, you can hear, you have preferences. Yep. So when you pluck, even again, the open strings of the guitar, you'll hear when you play three instruments, one will have a sound that you find boring, one you go, wow. One you'll go, oh, I like that too, but for different reasons. And then you can A and B the two you like. So for me, if I'm going to buy a guitar, the sound has to cast a spell on me. It has to make me go, oh, that's so pretty. I want to play more. The guitar you purchase should be one that lulls you in. It makes you want to play it, and then you'll play more.
Yep.
If you're not fascinated by the sound, you're not going to want to play the instrument. Playability and sound are the two most important things. And when it comes to sound, remember that it's subjective. Just because I like a certain sound doesn't mean all my friends or even Marshall is going to like the sound also. He could appreciate it and prefer another guitar. This is okay. So find something you totally love.
Yeah. A lack of funds is a temporary affliction. A bad guitar is a permanent curse. It's true. You spend the money on the guitar and you don't play it, and you throw it under your bed, you've wasted the money and your time. Don't do that.
Totally. The next thing you have to know before you buy a guitar is whether you want to buy new or used. There are pros and cons to each. Marshall, what's your opinion? Should someone buy new or used?
At this price point, they should always buy used. And it's because at this point, they're depreciating. So if you're going to spend $1,000, I'd like you to spend $1,000 on something that may have been $3,000 earlier, and somebody's put a couple scratches and dings on it, but it's structurally good and it sounds better. You get a lot more guitar and value for your money. I find that at that $1,000 and under price point, you're dealing with a lot of excess build materials, and you just don't get as much guitar for your dollar.
Yes. But for the same amount of money, you can get a better guitar for cheaper.
Yeah.
One point to make is that the wear marks from natural wear on an instrument, just from normal use, don't matter. I know that we all want pristine guitars, but if you really play your guitar all the time and you play it for a year, it's going to end up with some dings on it.
Yep.
This guitar here has a big ding on the front of it, but you know what? It's part of the charm of the instrument, and it doesn't affect the sound, so it doesn't matter. So just because something has wear marks doesn't actually mean it's worth less, but it might be being sold for less, and it could be a very good deal for you. There are also cons to buying a used guitar. The cons could be that the guitar was mistreated, and it could actually have serious structural issues. Marshall, what are some structural problems that we might see when buying a used guitar?
Yeah, so the first and foremost thing that I would see are cracks, typically along the fingerboard or on the soundboard where it got too dry and it cracked. And a lot of people will just shove synthetic glue into it and ruin the guitar. That to me is a deal killer right there.
So if you're looking at a guitar and one has a crack in it, an open crack, would you avoid it?
At $1,000 or less, absolutely. If it's got an open crack, you're going to spend another $200-300 getting it fixed by somebody who knows what they're doing.
What are some other issues that you might find?
The action height may be really high or really, really low, and that could be because the neck has warped in one direction or another, because typically these guitars are put together really quickly with unseasoned woods.
Okay.
So at that price point, sometimes the necks will pull backwards. You'll never get it to play right. Others, the necks will pull forward. Again, very expensive repair to get it right. So if it doesn't play right from the beginning, don't get it.
Okay, yeah. When it comes to buying a new guitar, I think there are some pros, which is that you avoid any concern about cracks. You avoid any concern about how it was treated. Generally, when you buy a new guitar, it's going to be pristine out of the box. It doesn't mean the playability is going to be pristine. It means that, however, that the instrument is in good shape because it's brand new, and you know exactly what you're going to get. Especially if you've played, for example, the same guitar in a shop, you'll get basically that when you order one from one of the trusted brands for budget classical guitars. So you have to make this decision. We can't make it for you, but I think we agree that if you can find the same instrument used that's in good shape, that's played in, and especially if you can try it in advance, often buying used will save you money.
I mean, I'd look at something maybe from the 70s Japanese, because they're generally really reliable. I almost never see them for problems. And they're a ton of fun. Like, they're really, really good.
Cool.
Number 5, don't buy your guitars based off of how they look. There's some really pretty guitars out there. There's some that get me going at this price point where I look at it and go, I gotta get that. Don't buy it off of looks. You don't look at your guitar, you play your guitar.
Right. I have to tell the story now. When I was buying my first classical guitar, I was going off to college and I wanted to get something really nice, but I knew nothing about classical guitars. I went to my local guitar shop, and up super high, they had a very, very shiny classical guitar with all of these beautiful inlays, mother of pearl inlays on the guitar. And so, not knowing anything, I said, well, it's shiny, it's up high, and it's got some nice looking ornaments on it. So clearly that's the best instrument in the shop, and then I just bought it. This was a huge mistake. When it comes to shiny guitars, like I could see my face in the finish, this is actually a bad thing, isn't it?
Not necessarily, but generally on price point under 1,000.
Yeah, speaking of those guitars only.
Yes, speaking of guitars only under 1,000 or 1,500, basically, if you can see yourself in the reflection, that means that there's a ton of finish on it. The more finish that's on it, the less sound you get. It's like the shock absorbers on a car. You know, your guitar vibrates and your finish says no. I remember that first guitar that you had. That was truly bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
It sounded suffocated. It sounds a little bit like you hear me speaking now, and now you hear me speaking, I'm a bit covered and muted.
It was 20% worse than that.
So the finish is it's caked over the wood, preventing it from doing what it does, which is what sound is. It's all about resonation, right?
Yeah.
A resonance.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't get fooled by shiny wood or fancy woods. If they're using a fancy wood on it that's perceived as expensive, chances are that means that the rest of the guitar is a lot cheaper because they spent that money on material, not on sound.
I do see that often with like some type of exotic wood guitar, and they look very beautiful. I mean, exotic wood is gorgeous.
I've been tempted many times.
Yes, but just because one instrument has an exotic wood doesn't say much about the sound, the playability, whether it's worth that much money. So your eyes will fool you when it comes to buying a guitar. It happens to us all the time that we get drawn in,
Yep.
even with our level of experience. But trust your ears.
Yeah.
Trust how it feels. These are the most important things that will determine whether or not this is an instrument a year later you're going to be happy playing.
And now, I've got a bonus one for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, one of the things that you really want to think about when you buy your first nice guitar, under $1,000 at this price point, is resale. What if you don't like it? That's perfectly fine. You know, we are guitar nerds, geeks. We've built our whole life around all of this. We can't understand not being able to enjoy this.
Yeah.
But we also get it that it may not be for you. So the last thing that I want you to do is end up with an instrument that you can't get rid of. So if you have something that's a nice guitar, you'll be able to sell it. If you see something that's kind of weird and crazy looking and you buy it because of looks, despite our best protestations against that, you might not be able to sell it. So you want to look at, you know, and this is also ties to the new versus used. I'd rather you be able to get as much money as you put into it out of it or close to it, rather than losing $300, $500, $600 on a new guitar that has depreciated.
So how can our viewers know whether or not the guitar is going to have a good resale value?
You know, go to the major sites and see what used ones are selling for. Because chances are, I mean, it's not like they're updating their models. They aren't really changing all that much. So if you can get something that's used but also being sold new today, that's saving you money right there. And you can pretty much get them for a reasonable price and sell it for almost the same price if you don't like it.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, I really hope that these tips helped you and informed you for your first purchase or maybe an updated purchase. Consider what we talked about. Remember, playability and sound are king. Figure out your price point and go from there. So please do subscribe if you haven't already. Please do subscribe to Marshall's YouTube channel, where you can learn all about guitar building. It's a really fascinating channel. Marshall, is there anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, use promo code Brandon for $500 off the build of one of my guitars. And thank you.
All right, guys. See you next time.